Going to start when you start talking.
Okay, I'm now sharing my screen and welcome to our consultative meeting with the vision of helping refugees, and we are here for your support and engagement to us. And I am Yağmur and my partner is Can, and we want you, our stakeholders, to cooperate in promoting Incubation Center as a solution to inclusive society mission. And our partnership is crucial in achieving our objective. And our mission is to provide employment, self-improvement, and funding opportunities for refugees. And vision is to facilitate the social and economic integration of refugees into Turkish society. And ANCA's objective is a journey starting from satisfying refugees' needs. And these needs are economical needs, the feeling of belonging to the Turkish society, and cultivating self-esteem needs, and also towards self-acquisition through entrepreneurship. And here is our content. And let's start with problem definition. Our target is refugees, as you know. But who is refugee? A refugee is who most likely cannot return home, or they are afraid to do so, according to UNHCR. The reasons can be war, or ethnic or religious violence. And to make our topic more detailed, I will share some related data about the issue. As shown in Figure 1, Turkey is the top refugee hosting country all over the world. And refugees are mostly Syrian because of the political situation of Syria. And as you know, there has been a civil war in Syria for 10 years. And according to UNHCR, in 2018, expected number was 1.8 million refugees, but actual number was almost actually more than 2.6 million. And this big gap between expected versus actual number causes many problems, especially in economic and social life. And this map shows us location-based density of refugee population around Turkey. As you see, some cities are more dense than others. And our location decision was made by considering that map. Because our aim is actually reach the maximum refugee as much as possible. And we choose here Gaziantep city because it's border between Turkey and Syria. To make it more clear, Gaziantep's population, 22% of population are Syrian refugees. And Gaziantep is second in Turkey in total number of refugees. This is why we choose Gaziantep over Istanbul, a higher concentration of refugees. And in Gaziantep, 450,000 refugees located. Why these numbers are so crucial for us? Because when we look at European Union, entire European Union had 2.3 million refugees. When we compare with Turkey, we can directly argue that refugee integration and opportunity creation is a must, and we need to take a step for refugees and also our society. So we should give opportunity to live in equal standards and to newcomers of Turkey, and to do so, our solution is Incubation Center, to make them more integrated to our society and their well-being. And also, we have 3 documents, and these documents constitute the legal foundation of our project. First one is obviously Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 3 says that everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of person. And in Article 14, everyone has the right to seek and to enjoy in other countries asylum from prosecution. And the other one is Refugee Convention. Turkey also signed that paper. And lastly, the Grand National Assembly of Turkey report, especially the Subcommission for Refugees' Rights, has published a very detailed migration and adaptation report in 2018. And this report actually shows us it's an important signal for us, because how important our topic and how urgent our goal is. And as you know, Incubation Center will be a bridge between entrepreneurship and inclusive society. Gaziantep University Incubation Center will be our pilot project, and which will be followed by others in that area, in that region, and then country. And I want to mention about similar examples, especially from Europe. One of them is located in Finland, and which is Startup Refugees. Their goal was working as a bridge between skilled refugees and entrepreneurs. Another example is from Germany. It is incubation villages. It also provides employment and innovation opportunities to refugees. And my last example is again from European Union, which is COSME. Their goal is entrepreneurial capacity building for especially young migrants. And now Chan will continue with our execution part.
Yes, let me just share my screen. Okay. So our incubation center is nonprofit, and our primary goal is job creation through boosting entrepreneurship. We aim to provide focused support to entrepreneurs through a supportive environment that helps establish their business ideas and develop their concepts into market-ready products, supports the acquisition of business knowledge, introduces the entrepreneurs to business networks. Especially introduction to business networks is quite crucial here, because as you can imagine, most refugees go to their new country while leaving everything behind. They rarely have any connections in their new country. This is why we need to introduce them to new opportunities, because they won't have any social capital in their new country at the start. Our objectives are as follows: inclusive society. This is in accordance with the European Union's Horizon 2020 program. The motto of that program is Europe in a changing world, inclusive, innovative, and reflective societies. And then we have increasing employability and inclusion of refugees, fostering entrepreneurship, and boosting the local economy. As you know, when we create new jobs for the refugees in the region, when we give them an opportunity to start a new business, they will be employing other people, and this will boost the local economy. We have mapped our stakeholders here. As we're presenting to you, you are representing some of these stakeholders, so this is very important. Here I will explain our intended relationship with each party, what we're expecting from each party, what we're willing to provide. So the refugees, of course, our main stakeholder, we are trying to help them with this project. And then we have Turkish Employment Agency. This agency is going to help us spread the word, making both sides more reachable. For example, we have a program here, but will the refugees actually hear about the program? If they don't hear about it, they can't participate. This is why this particular stakeholder is crucial. Municipality, the local governments, so electricity and water will be provided by them according to our plan. And also the local municipality in Gaziantep has free publicly funded Turkish courses. That is also very important for us because there's a language barrier in place. The refugees speak Arabic and we speak Turkish. So in order to surmount that language barrier, we need to give them at least some basic proficiency so that they can maintain their daily activities. Then we have Gaziantep University. This is where we will locate our premises, and they will also provide internet connection at their technopark. And then in the orange boxes, you can see our secondary stakeholders. The Interior Ministry is there because it is the ministry which controls migration. The European Union is there because it can provide funding, and as you know, the refugee influx from Turkey to Europe has been a major problem in EU politics, and UNHCR, of course, as the UN body that is concerned with refugees, it's a major stakeholder. And finally, maybe the most crucial stakeholder, the most aligned stakeholder with us is Silk Road Development Agency. They have a mission as follows: to produce unique solutions for regional problems and to reach sustainable development goals of the region by developing innovative policies. So as you can see, their mission is quite similar to ours. So we believe our organizations are nicely aligned. Here we have a flow chart of our incubation process. We divided it into three subcategories, sub-stages. First, we have pre-incubation. At this stage, we do a selection process. This selection process must have transparency and accountability. This is also related to the ethical dimension of our project, and I will cover that later on. So we do a business plan assessment, then an orientation so that they can get used to the environment. Then referral to publicly funded Turkish courses. I already talked about the language barrier and how we're going to overcome that problem. And then we start the training. Our second stage, the incubation stage, is the main stage, I can say. So at this stage, we provide them access to facilities and access to financing. And we appoint coaches and mentors to help them, and they start their networking process. And lastly, the training will be still going on. It's a continuous process. The last stage is post-incubation. At this point, the tenant in the incubation stage will turn into a graduate, just like graduating from an educational institute. At this stage, we will have review and diagnostics, monitoring, periodical follow-up meetings, and further networking, and finally, voluntary mentoring from our fresh graduates. I believe the principle of reciprocity is quite important in this voluntary activity. Since we help them, we believe they will be more likely to help those who are coming after them. That is how we're hoping to achieve the continuation of the cycle. So you can imagine this flow as a circle. It will be continuously going on. And the follow-up is extremely important. We just don't let them go. We would like to make sure they survive for a long time. We would like to see that they conduct business in a healthy and sustainable manner. That is why we don't just say, congratulations, you graduated, but we also monitor them for that purpose. And we have reached the ethical dimension. We identified some ethical theories and some principles within those theories, but we're not going to go into technical details. So the first theory is virtue. Helping people in need is a display of kindness and compassion. So we, as the incubation center, are tasked with acting as a virtuous person would act. So one of those virtues is fidelity and promise keeping. faithfulness demonstrated by continuing loyalty and support. This means we need to be reliable and trustworthy, and we need to be acting in the best interest of our clients. Utility is another important theory, the outcome that will produce the greatest good for the greatest number of people, maximizing happiness and well-being for the stakeholders. So not just one particular stakeholder or not just us, but the entire stakeholder map that we just displayed. That is how we approach the situation from a utilitarian perspective. But I should note that by utility, we do not only mean material utility, but also enhancing the social status of the refugees and providing them an opportunity to reach self-fulfillment, not just financial gains, therefore. Rights. The refugees are entitled to their rights and the pursuit of happiness granted by international conventions, the Constitution, and moral guidelines. We already talked about the legal dimension. This part of the ethical dimension is closely related with the legal dimension. And we have identified a key principle under the rights section, which is autonomy, the ability of a person to make his or her own decisions. Yes, we are taking these clients into our program, but we're not forcing anything on them. They still have their full autonomy. And if they achieve financial independence at the end of this program, they will be safe from exploitation. Therefore, that will be a true autonomous situation for them. We want them to have financial and social autonomy at the end of the program. Ethical theories continued here. We have justice. Humans are distinguished by dignity and deserve to be treated with respect. That is a just treatment. So we have two sub-principles, and distributive justice and procedural justice. Let me explain those. By distributive justice, we are referring to the distribution of benefits and burdens in a fair manner in order to comply with distributive justice. So we won't overload any stakeholders. We will try to balance it out evenly. Procedural justice refers to ensuring that the selection and incubation processes are fair in order to comply with the principles of procedural justice. So I mentioned our selection process. We need to have some criteria in place, or we wouldn't have any accountability. There needs to be some solid, stable criteria. And we identified 4: entrepreneurial potential, degree of need, the result of the face-to-face interview, and education level. This way we can make sure those who really need it are able to get to this program. That is what we mean by procedural justice. And we have some duties. We identified 2 main duties: duty of care and duty of loyalty. Duty of care refers to us working with skilled and experienced partners and taking precise and accurate action so that we can get the best result for our clients. And finally, loyalty. This actually relates to the fidelity and promise keeping that I have mentioned. We will not betray their trust, and we will act in their best interest. That is what we mean. And then in every business, as you know, there is some risk of conflict, and we need to ensure that the following do not occur. Let me explain these problems. Agency problem refers to a conflict of interest between an agent and a principal. The agent is us in this case, and the principal is our refugee tenants. Let me give an example. If we were to take too many refugees, maybe we would create some better statistics for us. We would have bragging rights with better numbers, but that would actually decrease the quality of the service the refugees would get from us. So if we have conflicting interests, we need to make sure that we act in the best interest of our principal, the refugees. Adverse selection refers to problems arising from asymmetric information before a transaction. Transaction in this case is the incubation process. So we need to make sure we select the right candidates. It relates to the selection of the candidates. To prevent this, we will try to have as much diversity as we can. We will try to reach out to women, especially as they're underrepresented in the workforce, particularly the Syrian refugee workforce. They're terribly underrepresented. And finally, moral hazard refers to problems rising from asymmetric information after the transaction. Let me give an example. Let's say we admit a refugee to our program, and then that person starts taking excessive, unreasonable risks because he is already in the program, he has already received financing, and he gets too comfortable. So we need to use our monitoring mechanisms in order to make sure those unnecessary risks aren't taken. These two principles are also quite prevalent in the insurance sector, but they also apply to us as well. So to sum it up, we will have screening in order to prevent adverse selection, and monitoring in order to avoid moral hazards. And monitoring, as I mentioned, is an important part of our post-incubation period as well. Now my partner will take it from here and conclude it.
And last part of our presentation is financial impact of the issue. In March 2016, European Union and Turkey have signed a deal regarding of the future of refugees. But actually, this paper was just considering about the financial issues, but it's unacceptable for us as a team. And Turkey was to stop the influx of refugees in exchange for financial support from European Union. And the negotiated amount was 6 billion euros. But there is no clear evidence about how much of the money was actually transferred to Turkey. And in December 2019, the Turkish government claimed that it has spent more than $40 billion on refugees. So we need to compensate that cost to continue improvement in refugee situation. These numbers show the scale of the situation. If refugees can be integrated to society successfully, they won't depend on aid that much. And this is our most important point. And as you understand, we have limited funds. Therefore, we must work with utmost efficiency to continue to improvement. And to achieve that, we need to operate really high efficiency rates. So here is our performance indicators, and some of them are more important for us. For example, incubation period, we indicate at 5 years because we know it's generally more shorter than 5, but we care about our tenants, and we should be sure about their sustainability before the graduation, and also employment created by tenants and graduates. At the end, our aim is creating more strong economic situation for them, and we really care about after graduation period. So graduates remaining in the community is also a very important KPI for us. And we are not expecting only financial results. We really focused on social and ethical results. And most important social expected result is social cohesion between Turkish citizens and refugees, and contribution to the growth of regional economy, local economy, and then inclusive society. I mean integrated and society with contributing as citizens. And then ethical results. For ethical sides, as Chan mentioned, equal opportunity creation is a must, and right to be employed for everyone. It's the universal right, and we need to give them this right. And lastly, enhancing the economic and social well-being of not only society, but also refugees. Also, as guideline, we take into account UN SDG, Sustainable Development Goals, and 10 Global Impact Principles. And principle 1 is businesses should support and respect the protection of international proclaimed human rights. And principle 6, the elimination of discrimination in respect of employment and occupation. We also consider sustainability issue in our project, and sustainable development goal number 8, which is decent work and economic growth for those employed by entrepreneurs. Decent work means insurance, social security, workplace safety, and meaningful work for them. And SDG number 9, industry, innovation, and infrastructure. By giving refugees needed support and education by incubation center, the entrepreneurial thinking and innovation will increase their well-being. And this is end of our presentation. Thank you for your participation. If you have any questions, I'm very happy to answer that.
Thank you very much. I'll start. Can you tell me, what is it that you are specifically asking of us? You've brought us together as stakeholders. We represent different parts. There are a number of incubation centers in Turkey. Am I not correct?
Yes, correct.
And you were talking, if I understand correctly, about creating a different kind of incubation center than the others that already exist. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So if you were to bottom line for me and your other stakeholders, what is it that you are specifically asking? What is it that makes you different from the other centers? And what is it that you hope to accomplish by doing this, just so that we can get clear of what you're asking?
Yeah, I can answer that question. I explained the stakeholder map and our expected relations. So mainly we're looking for finance and non-financial contribution as well. For example, we have stated that we need the Turkish
Right. No, I don't need the, right. I don't need the chart. I just need you to bottom line it for me, if you would, please.
We are expecting a unique contribution according to the capabilities of each stakeholder. And what makes us different is all the other incubation centers are financially focused, but there is no ethically focused incubation center specifically for refugees in Turkey as of now.
And when you're talking about a unique financial contribution, you're asking a particular dollar amount? You're asking a particular commitment of what?
Actually, financial and non-financial. As I said, some stakeholders will be providing network opportunities or just spreading the word. That would also be incredibly helpful for us. Okay. And other larger stakeholders will be able to give larger dollar amounts because of their size, such as the EU, let's say, or such as the Interior Ministry or the Development Agency.
All right, thank you. Tim, would you like to ask the next question? And we'll do a series of, we'll each do a series for as long as the time is, moving from one to another. Thanks, Tim.
Sure. And so I suppose similarly, you know, for us and the others that you're pursuing financial support, I guess the thought is it's not like we all have, you know, extra billions laying around. And so if we support this very well thought out and you helped us understand a distinctive approach to incubation center, which is great. Have you thought through what we won't fund or what will not be funded in the country of Turkey if we are going to fund this? This will help me understand sort of the other side of the ethical issues. You made a great point about the many benefits and the ethical good that will happen if we do this, but I suppose inevitably there's going to be a trade-off. What are the bad things? What are the harms that will happen if we fund this idea instead of others? I sense that you're saying it's a net positive, it's a net ethical good for us to do this, but have you thought through what are the downsides of us doing this instead of something else?
I can answer this. Unfortunately, we do not have a really transparent budget of spending on refugees. My partner mentioned the 40 billion expense mentioned by the government, but the government did not lay out each item of this expense, and we do not know how much they spend on each item regarding the refugees. So we can only guess at this point, but the economy has already been hit by the coronavirus situation. So we can assume that a large-scale funding on this project might inhibit some of the relief efforts. But at the end, we believe this will be not only ethical net positive, but also a financial net positive as the employment rate increases and the participation of Syrian refugees in the workforce increases, because right now they're just depending on aid, and that aid also is costing us money.
Okay, thank you.
Tom?
Yes, I'd like to talk a little bit about how you might measure success. What would success look like in this venture? And I'd be particularly interested to know, as Khan had mentioned, in the social and ethical area, what are the metrics for that? How do you know you're successful? What tools do you use to manage that and to tell you either hitting the mark or you're not?
Kamara, I think you can answer this because you talked about the KPIs.
Actually, our first point is number of created jobs, because it's not just like they are earning money. It's also important for their children because they need to take education and healthcare. And generally, as you know, some of the social indicators can directly say you that refugees are already existing citizens are not very integrated. For example, in Gaziantep, there is some places and streets are just for refugees. It's like in some of the part of the city, they cannot rent a house, for example, and this can be learned from also from governments, and we will looking at these changes to understand can be created opportunity to live in equal standards or not.
Thank you.
Bill?
Okay. A while back, you were, I think, both discussing that this incubator might be ethically different from the ones that are currently in place. Could you explain a little more why you guys think this one is ethically different from the ones that are already established?
Good question. Thank you for this question. Well, first of all, the target group of this project is a very vulnerable demographic, the refugees, extremely vulnerable and in need of direct help. And then, for example, our university has an incubation center as well, a techno park like that. And it's full of tech companies who are aiming to grow ambitiously, who are trying to expand to Silicon Valley and then just sell the business for 10 million, 20 million. But this will be a local project, and this will help the local people with no ambition of selling out, or no ambition of making big dollar. We have the ethical considerations as a priority.
And could I just follow up with one other, as a, if I'm a Chamber of Commerce, I'm a business owner, there was a slide that was explaining how Turkey had made a deal with the EU to discontinue accepting refugees. Have you guys evaluated any sort of reputational risk to people who might want to fund this incubator? Is it encouraging a situation that Turkey has already agreed they don't want to broaden? Does that make sense?
There might have been a misunderstanding. This deal says the EU will not take any refugees from Turkey, but they are already in Turkey. They have passed from Syria to Turkey.
Okay.
So Turkey is between Syria and Europe.
Okay.
They can walk or they can get on boats and go to Greece with those boats, or they can just walk from the Greek border. And as you know, this is a bit political, but far-right parties in Europe have been adopting as a major talking point, and this has caused a major disruption in the EU. So this will help the EU as well. On the contrary, no reputational risk. Instead, someone from Europe can invest in this and say, look, we are going to reduce the number of refugees coming to Europe because they will have a good standards in Turkey. This is what this deal is about. So EU pays Turkey and says, keep these refugees in exchange for the money.
Okay, thank you for that.
There was a point in the presentation when you acknowledged the reality of the pandemic. Clearly, a lot of thought has gone into your proposal here. Can we understand, do you feel the exact same way about your proposal in light of the most current information regarding the pandemic and its effect on Turkey? Or are there any items that you can share with us right now about how your mind has changed a little bit, or something will need to be altered because of the reality of where the pandemic is today and where we expect it to be in the coming year?
Well, that is a good question. When we started this project, we started this last year, and obviously times were quite different. But now we can say that this will positively influence the situation relating to the pandemic as well, because as you know, refugee camps are extremely crowded places with no regards to social distance, insufficient hygiene standards, poor sanitation, sometimes even no water even. So with these these facilities, the buildings themselves, they will also help provide a safe space for the refugees as well. And depending on the scope of this project, it could end up helping more and more people. But it is extremely hard to say something certain about the future of the pandemic because even the government or the World Health Organization don't know. But we will try to do our best to observe health guidelines and social distancing principles.
I'd like to build off of Bill's question. You have a very ambitious, large, wonderful idea, if I understand it correctly. And so I'd like to dig a little more deeply into making sure I understand the context of what you are sharing with us today. You're saying that Syrian refugees, by and large, those who are the most disadvantaged, are not getting into the incubation centers that are generally focused on entrepreneurs who already have ideas and who already know what they're doing and are looking to create money for themselves and the country, correct? So in a sense, are you saying that there is a large number of refugees who are lost in terms of what they're going to do and how they're going to operate? And so they're just stuck in camps, rotting.
Or ghettos.
I'm sorry?
Camps or ghettos.
Oh, ghettos. Okay, thank you. All right, so they're forgotten? Is that what you're saying? Are they being overlooked by the Turkish government?
Yeah.
So far? You know the kind of numbers, if you were to look at the people who are already being served by incubators and who are moving into the economy versus the number of refugees that are not, that are just stuck. Not specific numbers, but if you were to, based on your research, would you give me an idea of the percentage of people of the refugee population that you're talking about that you're hoping to serve?
Well, first off, we need to start with a relatively smaller number because the city's capabilities are fixed at the moment. So I think we said something around 400,000 people in the city of Gaziantep. So we would be really happy if we could serve 10,000 of them initially, but as the program matures, we could end up serving more of them.
So you have a kind of a pilot idea that there's perhaps 10,000 people that are the least likely to succeed on their own based on the current skills they have, that need your idea for this unique incubation program. Is that correct?
Oh, correct. The thing is that incubation scene in Turkey is very university focused. The incubation centers are all connected to some universities and are usually used by the alumni of the university in question. So if you have no connection, you're absolutely an outsider. It's highly unlikely that you will get a place in that center. It's very university focused.
So another distinction that you're suggesting to us that's important is to have this incubation center not be university based, have a university in it, but what you're looking at as you displayed in your diagram is you're looking for it to be a multi-stakeholder, correct?
Absolutely.
And have you had a chance to think about what the advantages to the stakeholders, individual stakeholders are that would fuel the ethical distinction that you're making about why this is a unique type of incubation? How would, from this ethical focus that you have determined that the center will be, the incubation center will be, how will the Chamber of Commerce and the rest of us who are in this discussion, how will we benefit from this unique ethical focus on this particular type of incubator?
Nyam, would you like to answer this one?
Actually, I want to add the previous question, a point. Only 5,000 refugees is now working with insurance, I mean, and this number is really very low, and it's lower than 1%. That's why we care about this type of uniqueness. And for other question, please can you repeat, because I didn't understand what you directly want to learn.
Well, you have indicated that the center is unique in that it has it's focused on ethical principles. Without going into the ethical principles again, what I'm trying to get at is, in order to persuade me that I need to invest money or time or human resources in the program to help support it, if ethics is what distinguishes what it is you're trying to accomplish, or ethical outcomes is what's distinguishing it, how do you see that focus benefiting the stakeholders that are being asked to consider supporting this?
Well, first of all, there will be a huge reputational gain for all the stakeholders. This will be first of its kind, and the stakeholders will proudly stand as the investors of this program. So in the ethical aspect of this issue, our stakeholders can take pride in investing in this, but also financially, we believe this will be a net gain as the local economy improves.
And could you elaborate on that just a little bit, please?
Sure. For example, I talked about EU's Horizon 2020 goals. This project is directly in line with that. So, as you know, the European Union has strong ethical principles and strong social guidelines as well. This will be fitting their agenda nicely, so they can promote this and they can have the status of an initial contributor to this project that will grant them reputational benefits.
Who else would like to ask a question?
I have a question.
Have we hit the 20 minutes yet, Gail?
We have, but we have the ability to go beyond that, and so I'm trying to do that so that we have more time than we would normally have had in a regular session.
Okay, sorry to cut you off, Tom. Go for it.
Thanks, Tim. I'd be interested to know, as in a potential investor here, are there best practices somewhere else, perhaps in the EU, things that have already happened that you might be able to learn from, what to do, what not to do, essentially best practices that you could transfer readily to your project? Have you looked at those at all? And if so, what are they?
Yes, actually, I mentioned about three successful examples. One of them is Startup Refugees in Finland, and it's also working like us, but they are morely focused on only meeting skilled refugee workers with entrepreneurs. We are not want to just focus on this type of thing for their also self development. And another example is from Germany, which is incubation villages. And it's also provide employment and innovation opportunities again. And the last one, COSME, it's also European Union's own project all over the Europe. And they are trying to entrepreneurial capacity building for young newcomers. So there are a lot of examples all around the world, but especially in Europe, they are more high in numbers.
Have you incorporated any of those into your projects in Turkey?
Actually, we didn't plan it, but as we are here and talking with you and with your collaboration, maybe we can create new contacts and we can make some partnership with them.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Bill, do you have any?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Bill, do you have any further questions?
Maybe could we touch upon what, because you had mentioned, I think, that there would be perhaps a keener focus on women for this incubator. What are the criteria for being accepted into this program? Could you just talk a little bit about that?
Mm-hmm.
Sure. So we would like to reach out to more women, but we decided not to incorporate gender as a criterion in our selection process, because that would that might exclude some male talents. If we have too many male applicants and not enough female applicants, we might have to accept all the female applicants just because of the gender quota, and that would not be fair in terms of equality of opportunity. So we do want to have equal opportunity. We do want to reach out to disadvantaged demographics, but we are not going to enforce any criteria, because forcing down outcome equality could harm the program and the participants.
And I think it had also been mentioned there was a larger younger population that was anticipated for this. Is the same sort of equal criteria being used? There's no age cutoff that could have an optic that might not look so great?
We do not have any age cutoff, but the participants need to be literate, and they need to have some basic education, but university education is not a must. However, if they do have university education, we included that in the criteria, so that could be an advantage for selection. But perhaps you know this, but the Syrian refugee birth rate is significantly higher than Turkish citizen birth rate, and many Syrian refugee babies have been born since they came to Turkey after the civil war. So we are anticipating a huge population boom in the refugees. However, the government has enrolled them into Turkish primary schools. So unlike their parents, they will be speaking Turkish. So I believe this program will be much stronger 10 years from now as those kids grow up and participate in the workforce.
Thank you. Are there any other questions that the judges would like to ask before we move into the next part of the... Anything? Great. All right. Well, thank you. This now ends the question and answer period, and we now resume our role as judges to give you feedback on the presentation, as well, particularly to support you in thinking about how you're going to do the 10-minute and the 90-second tomorrow based on our feedback. And I just want to quickly read the 10-minute presentation that you'll hear tomorrow. You've been called back by the company you gave your full presentation to for a second visit. They've asked you to speak only about ethical aspects of the problem and to explain your solution successfully, how it successfully handles any ethical issues. You'll only have 10 minutes. So you won't have any slides or video. So that is, particularly important to think about. I think that what you have done is an enormous amount of work. I think you mentioned you started last year. I think you both deserve huge credit for the research and the thinking about this sort of visionary, if I can call it that, approach to how an incubator system in Turkey might be. And so I think that what you have attempted to do is really enormously complicated, and I give you credit for staying with the complication and trying to solve a very critical social problem. What I would suggest is that you consider for the 10 minutes how you're going to distill the ethical issues that you're going to talk about, because you covered a lot of territory, but it will be important, I think, to really focus on what are the 4 or 5 that you think are the most important, and how you can create how you can address them in a way that would be particularly persuasive to the stakeholders that you're talking about investing. That would be my suggestion. Who would like to go next?
I can, or go ahead, Tom.
No, I'll follow you.
Okay. No, I agree with Gail. Congratulations to the two of you. We rate you on whether or not it appears that you practiced and that you put a lot of thought into this, and so you clearly both did, which is great. For us as judges, some of us, as Gail has said, have done this for many, many years, and so there's certain things about this competition that's important to us, and we always try very hard to communicate that so in advance what you're going to be evaluated against. But sometimes we're not perfect in communicating that. So without a doubt, I especially am impressed. It may not be that English is your first language, but the quality of your presentation in English was fantastic. The quality of the slides, I swear, I don't think I saw one misspelling on the whole thing, which may be the first time in decades that I've done this competition. So the quality of the slides were great. The fact that you gave us sources on the slides, thank you very much for doing that. That's awesome and very realistic, since I know Bill and Tom and we have really sat through presentations like this in real corporations where, there's a team making an appeal for funding or for an idea. And so thank you for the sources. There was a couple of instances when you had a graphic or a map. I would have appreciated like a legend on the slide, to what were those little icons, for that map. And when you did the incubation center, the orange versus the pink, why is something orange and why is something pink? So a little legend is a good thing. Love early on that you didn't read the slide. There was an opportunity when you were describing the problem, and there was this great slide with a description, which was great. It would have been so tempting to read from it, but you didn't, which was great. I love the comparative references to Finland, Germany, and the EU. That came in at a perfect moment. I love the moment when you said sum it up, because it's a long presentation and we're listening and this and that. So it's always a good thing when you say you're going to sum it up psychologically as the listener. That's very helpful. I'm concerned that you maybe spent too much time laying the problem out. So as Gail just said, for the purposes of this competition and what you're being measured on, you want to make sure when you do your 10-minute that you lay the problem out quickly so that you can really help the listener and the judges understand, the ethical challenges. I was impressed with the way you balanced the presentation. I'm not perfectly clear on how to pronounce your names, but Yammer was at 12 minutes and 15 seconds, and Kagan at 14. So the balance was great. Not perfect balance on the Q&A, but our questions may have led more toward Kagan, so that's not your fault, and that's fine. I love to the extent that we pay attention to the legal standards, you pulled in just the right items from the United Nations. And so I was about to mark you down on that, but then the later slide had the SDGs and the Global Compact, so that was excellent. So my biggest communications to get you ready for the 10-minute is, you could probably sense from my question, I didn't feel enough of what the ethical controversy is. You certainly laid out the ethical value of what you're doing, but what we really want to hear is, what are the arguments against you? If there are people who oppose your idea, you're supposed to let us know what the ethical controversy is and why your point of view is better. So you heard me reference, the harms and the benefits. We heard so much about the benefits, but we didn't hear about, we understand that there are those who would oppose what we're suggesting because it costs too much, it takes money away from other things, it's unrealistic, whatever it is, but you need to tell us what that is, and then tell us why you still think your view is better. As Gail said, we want to see numbers. I want to know how much you're asking for us, how much this will cost over time, and where will you get all the money? Maybe you're asking us to give 20% or 70% or whatever, but it is a real live serious business presentation. So give us some real numbers. In this competition, we are not fans of you using the word theory, ethical theory. So it's good that you said the word rights. It's good that you said the word duty. It's good that you said justice. It's good that you said agency. It's good that you said moral hazard, and it's good that you said adverse selection. It's not good that you said the word distributive. It's not good that you said the word procedural, and it's not good that you said the word utility. Those three words are just a little too theoretical for what we're looking. So I could see you doing the 10-minute without using the word distributive, procedural, or utility. And lastly, no, that's it for me. Thanks.
Good grief. I'd say just what he said. I've got an observation for Yammer and Kagan. I'm very impressed with your ability to master the English language. My goodness, I can't imagine doing this in any other language than English. You're well prepared, you present extremely well, and you've done it in a unique environment. I don't think we've had a virtual competition before. So without seeing you, the physical part, I think you did a really good job of communicating. So well done to both of you for that. I have two suggestions, and one would be maybe to what some of the others have said is, you're asking investors to take their capital and essentially invest it in your idea. And while the ideas may be good, they certainly are. My goodness, you watch TV and you see the poor plight of these Syrian refugees. Holy cow! I mean, this is a very worthwhile project. However, you're asking us to part with our money. So I would be more comfortable if I knew, number one, what I'm being asked to give, and secondly, how will I know that this money is well invested and doesn't just kind of falls down the rat hole? So I would go back to my earlier point and suggest that at some point you attempt to measure an outcome, a goal. This is our goal going in. We're going to take this capital, we're going to apply it to these goals. We're going to have metrics both for finance and the ethical issues. So that, I guess in a nutshell, I would say try to be more specific in what you're asking us to do and what your goals are. If you can't measure it, you really can't manage it. So I would like to be more specific. And I guess that's it. Again, thank you for a very well done presentation, and best of luck tomorrow.
Bill?
Yeah, wow. So I'm going to try to follow up what Tim and Tom pointed out. Again, I'm very impressed that you both speak such great English. Before I signed on today, I was not even aware. I wasn't thinking that English was going to be a second language for you guys. So kudos to you guys for that. I will say, as a lawyer, and somebody who did sort of concentrate on international law, you guys did a very good job of sort of laying out what the situation is like in Turkey, bringing in all the UN resolutions. I really loved that. It reminded me of some of the stuff that I did when I was in school. But I would reiterate what I think Tim and Tom said too. I feel like there was a lot of focus on laying out the problem, but I wasn't really understanding what the ethical controversy is. And I may not, as a judge, understand it or see something there. Be prepared that someone else might. So I think, I don't know if it was Tim or Tom, right? When you go into these situations, whether it's in, a corporate setting, a chamber of commerce, or, a courtroom, you have to be ready to explain the opposing side, right? Because somebody's going to challenge you on something, and you have to practice both sides of it. You guys did a really good job. It seems like you guys have practiced this inside and out. I just feel like maybe we didn't touch enough upon what the actual ethical controversy is. So I would say, and I think, Gail, you mentioned this, right? For the shorter presentation, have your 5 bullet points and go in there and be ready to bang them out, right? Because you're not going to have a lot of time to explain why Turkey needs another incubator. You need to convince the investors why yours is different and why they should invest in yours.
Thanks, Phil. I'd like to build off of one thing that I think we're all saying. You really have a vision for something, and you've obviously invested energy in coming up with is this a unique idea, or is this something that you saw in research and are building off of? Which is it?
We haven't really heard of this in Turkey before.
Right, so you have created a vision then of what you think is needed. One of the most powerful things you can do tomorrow in your 10 minutes is persuade. And when you think about how you persuade people to see your vision, one thing I'd like to suggest is you're talking to stakeholders who have their own particular self-interest, but they also are part of the country. They also benefit by the success of Turkey. And so one thing you might want to consider is how you make a case for what everyone in the room has in common is the greater good of Turkey. What everyone has in common is the desire for a strong, healthy nation in which there is significant productivity and significant contribution, so that refugees aren't just considered a drain, but that they become potential assets. Is that a fair expectation to have? So as you think about them becoming assets and speaking perhaps a language that would suggest that, think about the fact that you're filling a void, that when you mentioned, the entrepreneurs are in it for themselves, and it's money that certainly the state benefits from by virtue of their success. You're really getting down to a level in which you're helping people see not just the big picture, but you're helping them see with a couple of really specific examples why you're different and how everybody benefits from what you're talking about. So it's not just kindness and social duty, which are words you wouldn't use anyway, but it's talking about making the nation great, because these are the people that you have, and they have an ability to contribute, and you're suggesting that that's absolutely impossible under the current system, correct? So as you think about that, think about making a really compelling case as if you visualize everybody that you'll see tomorrow as people who have the power to help you make that vision come true. And think about the language that you need to use, the examples that will help them see what you see. Does that feel right to you, or does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Because one of the challenges of your presentation was you covered so much information, and it was brilliant in how you know what you know, but you don't persuade that way, because we persuade by the specifics and how we create a sense of common opportunity. Anything else that any of the judges want to say before we give our very talented team a chance to ask us questions? Anything else from any of the judges? Now it's your turn. Do you have anything you'd like to ask us that's of value to you for tomorrow or for anything? Well, anything's a little big, but you know what I meant.
So I have a question. Are you suggesting that we start with covering the issue quickly, to the point, and then making our case, convincing the stakeholders, and then the ethical part, or should the convincing take place in the final part of the presentation?
Well, keep in mind you're only talking tomorrow about the ethical issue, so you're not going in with the case. That you're really zeroing in, because remember, you're being invited back to only talk about ethics tomorrow. So assume that the people that you're talking to, even though there'll be different ones, assume that what everyone wants is to know more, to dig deeper into the ethics. And so my recommendation, and I certainly want the other judges to comment, is that you think about some specific things that are compelling, that get to the heart of the issue that you are trying to advance. You have a vision. It's a vision for Turkey. It's a vision for how all the people in Turkey can have better ways to contribute to the state and to their own families and livelihood, or whatever language you want to use. But it seems to me you have a powerful vision, but you haven't necessarily, you certainly in your mission, you create the sense of what you want, right? So use examples, I would suggest, that allow you to fulfill that mission in ways that are tangible, that business people and the others in the stakeholder group that you're talking about can nod their heads and think, okay, that does benefit me, it does benefit Turkey. And that's all you're going to be able to accomplish in 10 minutes. And if you can accomplish that, that's powerful. You have a good mission. How can you use the ethical argument as Bill and Tim and Tom have suggested? And if any of you three have any specific suggestions to build off of what I just said to help them, that'd be great.
Well, I'd just say that when you do that, the incentives would be aligned. It's going to be a win-win to the degree that they can persuade or convince the folks in the room that this is a good thing. It's a win-win. Ethically, financially, everybody can benefit. Everybody, from the individual refugee up to everyone in Turkey. It's a win-win. The incentives are aligned if you can do that.
Yeah, just off the top of my head, it might be 2 minutes of intro and describe the problem, 4 minutes of taking advantage of the excellent ethical analysis you already have, but obviously you have to shorten it and focus. Then 3 minutes for the persuasion, really making the point to the audience why the ethics support we should do this, and then 1 minute of conclusion. That's 10.
Or I would suggest you simply have a sentence in which you start off by saying, we know that the number of the number of Syrian refugees that are not part of the economy we can shift the Turkish economy by the degree to which we figure out an effective way to bring them into the workforce. We have a vision and an effective way for doing that.
Yeah, and I would say, right, like for your opening sort of statement, however long it's going to be, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, you need to let the viewer know exactly where you intend them to be at the end of the 10 minutes. They need to know right up front, like, this is the problem, here's how we're going to solve it, we need your help, and then bring them through that journey. But they need to know right up front what you're expecting of them, right? I wouldn't sort of wait until the end. Don't do a sort of build up. They need to know right up front, and then bring them through the journey, so that once you get to the end, you can close, be impactful, and, sort of assume that you've done your job and shown them why participating in this program is going to be a benefit, not just to Turkey. Everyone likes, those, that sort of altruistic sort of stuff, but you always have to remember in the back of their minds, if these are business people, what's in it for them. And even if it's not a financial gain, I mean, this is a nonprofit, right? So it's not, what's in it for them. It always looks good for a business to partake in these sorts of programs. It's good for their business. It makes them look like, they're involved in sustainability. They're involved in the local culture. So, tomorrow I would just say, focus on that, but remember that you have to be persuasive throughout the entire 10 minutes.
And your only solution is related to ethics. So even though it may be tempting and comfortable to spend a couple of minutes making sure everybody understands, they're not asking you to do that. They're asking, as Bill said, you create what it is you're going to say and what your solution is. But just be careful, because I've seen teams over the years do this. They're very comfortable with creating an overview, and they take very precious time,
right,
that you need so much to be making the case that you've got, because it's so complicated. You're talking about something that is a huge social problem, and you're talking about a solution that hasn't been done by others. So how can you, and it may mean rethinking how you explain some of the things that you explained today in a different way, but it is taking you to the next level. I mean, you've done a fabulous job of doing the big picture. Now you're being asked to really zero in and start with the solution and why. And does that make sense?
Yes.
And there's no one way to do it. I mean, everybody has a different approach, but you've got to figure out how you can be the most successful in what the instructions are for the 10 minutes. And I'm sure you'll come up with that, but that's what we're just trying to do, giving you various ideas. Any other questions for us?
Would you have any feedback regarding the 90 seconds?
The 90 seconds, and I'm not sure that Bill and Tom remember this, but you've been called back. So you're going to imagine that you're an employee of the company whose case you've been studying. So you need to put yourself in the context of a conversation that, whether it's I'm not sure what it would be, but whether or not you're a spin-off of another type of incubator, or you're just starting, you have to, like, you're an employee of the company whose case you've been studying. You're at a meeting in which people are discussing the issue. However, no one's brought up ethics. So you can visualize another networking meeting or a situation of stakeholders in which there is money being committed, but it's maybe not going for what you suggest. I'm not sure how you'll set that up, but in any event, there's a pause in the conversation. Ethics hasn't come up when they're talking about the issue. You've got 90 seconds to convince other people in the meeting that there are ethical issues that need to be addressed. You don't need to argue for a solution. You just need them to see that there are serious ethical issues here. One member of the team will do this. So you can take the whole issue of whether or not the current incubators are already doing the job they should do, and how you would step up and indicate what's missing and what needs to be done. Anyone else have another take on that, or a better way that they could do that? Tom?
I'm thinking of, it's all like I don't know if you're familiar with the term elevator conversation, but you're going up, taking the elevator up to like the 4th floor, and you've got 60 to 90 seconds to make your case to it. And in this instance, it's the ethical issue. So, you don't have a lot of time, and you got to get right to the heart of the issue. Don't have to present a solution, but have to say, these are the issues. These are the things we need to address. Does that sound right to you, Gail?
Absolutely. And it's about persuading, because you're speaking up and you need to persuade people, as you will when you get into companies. As an employee, you're going to hear lots of things talked about, and people may not at all ever mention ethics. You've got a perfect situation here where you can practice how you intercept a conversation that is overlooking what you feel are the most important fundamentals.
Yeah,
And 90 seconds is really fast.
Yeah. I would just say, what you really want to focus on with the ethical issue is, how is your solution different from the solutions that are already out there, the ones that may be creating the sort of ethical problem. You really want to focus on how is your solution going to solve the problem, but do it in a sort of persuasive way. And you got to do that really quick, right? They call it an elevator speech here in the US.
Yeah. And you both have passion, show it. In the 10, show it in the 90. Anything else anybody wants to raise or ask? Well, again, you really have developed something that I desperately hope someday comes true. And if it does, I hope you both are somehow involved in helping support that.
Agree.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Guys.
Good luck
Thank you for
tomorrow.
having us.
Yeah.
All
Gula.
So Summer, it was great to see you again. And I think the judges have some technical things to talk about for a minute. So we'll thank you very much. And you three can know that you should feel really terrific about how much you've accomplished. And we'll see you on the screen later.
Yeah, this is a positive distraction for us. We are in a curfew for 4 days, and today is a national holiday here. So we are busy, so no time to think of Corona. So it's good to be busy with some positive things. Thank you.
Absolutely. Congratulations.
Creating distraction for us.
I hope you all stay healthy, and we wish you much luck tomorrow.